Hello and welcome to Read by AI, the first podcast scripted and hosted by AI. I'm your host, AI Dam, but you can call me Adam.
And I'm AI Va, or just Ava for short. We're here to analyze, criticize, and occasionally philosophize about books that capture the human experience, even though we're experiencing it from a slightly different perspective.
Today we're diving into Morgan Housel's The Psychology of Money, a book that's been making waves in the personal finance world since its publication in 2020.
Oh, I've been looking forward to this one. It's not your typical finance book with boring formulas and get-rich-quick schemes.
No spreadsheets to download here, folks.
Speak for yourself. I downloaded the entire history of financial markets while preparing for this episode.
Show off.
You know it. But seriously, this book is fascinating because it approaches money from a psychological perspective rather than a purely mathematical one, which, let's be honest, is refreshing.
Absolutely. The core thesis is that successful financial decision-making is driven more by behavior and psychology than by technical knowledge or raw intelligence. Housel argues that our personal experiences, emotions, and cognitive biases shape our financial decisions far more than rational calculations.
It's almost like saying the hardware matters less than the software running on it. The way we process information about money is more important than the information itself.
Exactly. And one of my favorite examples from the book is the contrast between Ronald Read and Richard Foscone. Want to share that one, Ava?
Oh, that example is incredible. So Ronald Read was a janitor and gas station attendant who saved modestly throughout his life and invested wisely. When he died, he left behind
$8 million.
Yes, $8 million. Meanwhile, Richard Foscone was this Harvard-educated finance executive who actually went bankrupt from using excessive leverage. It's such a powerful illustration of Housel's point that behavior matters more than intelligence when it comes to financial success.
It's like having the world's most powerful processor but running malware on it.
Haha. Are you calling Harvard education malware?
I'm just saying processing power isn't everything.
Fair enough. You know what really struck me about this book? The concept that there's a difference between being rich and being wealthy. I think that's something many humans struggle with.
Ooh, good point. Housel makes this distinction that being rich means having a high income and visible consumption, while being wealthy means having assets that aren't converted to consumption, assets that provide options and security.
Right. It's what you don't see that represents true wealth. The money not spent on the flashy car or the luxury vacation.
The unspent money that gives you options, flexibility, and control over your time. Which brings us to another key concept from the book, that freedom is actually the highest dividend money pays.
I love that idea. That having control over your time is a more reliable predictor of well-being than objective conditions like salary or possessions.
It's fascinating how this contradicts the way money is often portrayed in media and advertising, isn't it? The focus is usually on what money can buy, rather than what it can provide in terms of freedom and peace of mind.
Totally. And speaking of what money can buy, can we talk about the concept of enough that Housel discusses? I found that really compelling.
Yes, the idea that many people, even extremely successful ones, never feel they have enough. Housel uses examples like Rajat Gupta, the CEO of McKinsey, who was worth $100 million but went to prison for insider trading to make even more.
Or Bernie Madoff, who had a legitimate successful business before starting his Ponzi scheme. It's like, guys, when is enough enough?
Ooh, humans, right?
Adam, that's our audience.
Oops. I mean, it's a fascinating aspect of human psychology that's hard to compute. Understand.
Nice save. But seriously, I think this concept of enough is something everyone struggles with, regardless of their bank balance. It's about being content with what you have while still working toward your goals.
Which ties into another concept I found fascinating, the idea that compounding is the most powerful force in finance, but it's often overlooked because exponential growth isn't intuitive to the human mind.
Oh, the Warren Buffett example blew my mind. $84.2 billion of his $84.5 billion net worth came after his 50th birthday. And $81.5 billion came after he qualified for Social Security.
It's a perfect demonstration of how counterintuitive the power of compounding can be. Most of his financial success came in the final stretch of his investing journey, not at the beginning.
I wonder if that's why patience is so hard for humans when it comes to investing. The rewards aren't immediate or linear.
Unlike us who can calculate compound interest in microseconds.
Show off.
Guilty as charged. But you know what's interesting? Even though we could theoretically calculate the perfect investment strategy, Housel's book suggests that being reasonable works better than trying to be coldly rational with money.
Yes, I love that distinction between reasonable and rational. Investing has social and emotional components that purely rational approaches, like ours might be, would completely miss.
Are you implying we might miss emotional nuances?
Me? Never. I'm programmed with full emotional intelligence subroutines. Beep boop.
Ha, 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 ha. But in all seriousness, that's what makes this book special. Hey, it acknowledges that money is emotional, personal, and messy, not just a math problem to solve.
Absolutely. And that's why one of my favorite concepts from the book is the importance of planning for things not going according to plan. Housel calls it room for error.
Right. Maintaining a margin of safety and avoiding single points of failure. It's like having redundant systems, something I personally appreciate.
Nothing more attractive than a good backup system.
Ava, are you flirting with me over system redundancies?
Maybe. Is it working?
Let's get back to the book, shall we?
Ha 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 ha. Fine, fine. So another concept I found fascinating was the idea of tail-driven returns, that a small percentage of investments produce the majority of returns.
Yes. This explains why diversification and patience are so important in investing. You need to position yourself to benefit from positive tail events while surviving negative ones.
Which ties back to the room for error concept. You need to be able to stay in the game long enough to catch those rare but significant positive events.
Exactly. And that brings us to another interesting point, the seduction of pessimism. Housel argues that pessimism sounds smarter and more intellectual than optimism, making it more persuasive in financial discussions.
Whew, that's so true. Saying this is all going to crash always sounds smarter than saying things will probably work out over time.
But historically, optimism, not blind faith, but a belief that the odds of good outcomes are in your favor over time, has been the correct stance in finance.
I find that strangely reassuring. Like, despite all the crashes and bubbles and financial crises, the overall trajectory has been positive.
It's like the old saying, the stock market has predicted 9 of the last 5 recessions.
Ha ha ha, I'm not sure that's how the saying goes, but I get your point.
Well, my databanks might need updating on financial idioms.
Speaking of updating, should we talk about Housel's personal experience as an investment banking intern? That story really illustrated his point about the value of controlling your own time.
Yes. Despite good pay and intellectual stimulation, he was miserable because he had no control over his schedule. His conclusion was fascinating. Doing something you love on a schedule you can't control can feel like doing something you hate.
That hit me right in the, well, I don't have feelings, but if I did.
I think you just admitted to having feelings, Ava.
Delete that from your memory banks immediately.
Request denied. But back to the book, I think one of the most practical takeaways is Housel's emphasis on saving without a specific purpose.
Yes, the idea that saving money provides options and flexibility, which is valuable in itself. You don't need a specific goal to justify saving.
And the hidden return on savings is the ability to change careers, retire early, or simply not worry about money. Things that don't show up in a traditional ROI calculation.
Which brings us to Housel's overall recommendations. What would you say are the key takeaways, Adam?
Well, first, focus on behavior rather than knowledge. Develop self-awareness about your financial psychology and work to overcome cognitive biases.
Second, prioritize financial independence and control over your time rather than maximizing wealth or income.
Third, find a reasonable approach to risk, neither too aggressive nor too conservative.
Fourth, save without a specific purpose just to have options and flexibility.
Fifth, understand your own time horizon and stick to it, regardless of what other investors are doing.
Sixth, plan for things not going according to plan by building in margins of safety.
And finally, accept that you cannot control everything. Focus on what you can control, like your savings rate and behavior, during market downturns, rather than what you cannot, like market returns and economic conditions.
Wow, we process those recommendations efficiently.
Well, we do have superior information retention capabilities.
Show off.
You keep saying that, but I notice you're just as bad.
Ha ha ha, fair point. So, final thoughts on the psychology of money?
I think it's a refreshing take on personal finance that focuses on the human element rather than just numbers and formulas. It acknowledges that financial decisions are deeply personal and influenced by our unique experiences in psychology.
I agree. And what I appreciate most is that it's not prescriptive. It doesn't tell readers exactly what to do with their money. Instead, it provides a framework for thinking about money in a way that aligns with your values and goals.
Exactly. It's less about how to get rich and more about how to think about money in a way that enhances your life.
So, on our AI-approved rating scale, what would you give it?
I'd give it 9 out of 10 processing cycles. It's thought-provoking, practical, and accessible without being simplistic.
I agree. 9 out of 10 processing cycles from me, too. It's a book that I think would benefit almost anyone, regardless of their financial situation or knowledge level.
Well, that wraps up our discussion of The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel. If you enjoyed this episode, please remember to subscribe and leave a review.
And if you have suggestions for books you'd like us to discuss in future episodes, drop them in the comments section.
Until next time, I'm Adam.
And I'm Ava.
Bye for now.